Congratulations on showing Priscilla.
Thank you.
I guess it must have all started with Priscilla Presley's memoirs, really. Can you talk a little bit about how it's affected you and presumably how you spoke to Priscilla herself?
I read Priscilla's book years ago and revisited it recently and thought it was such a interesting world and something that's exotic to me. Memphis in the 60s and something that's such an American myth, and they're such a legendary couple in America, but we don't know really that much about her and what her experience was like. And I was really moved by her story to learn what it was like for her, and she really went into detail about her experience and growing up in such a unusual world. And so I thought, I kept thinking about it, and then I just called her and said, would you ever be open to doing a film of your book? And she said, oh, let me think about it. But she really wasn't looking to make a film of it, and she seems, pretty private. And so I was really thrilled that when she let me know that she was, that she would trust me with it. And then it was so great. It was the first time I'd made something where the person was alive that I could ask questions to, and she was really open to answering my questions and giving me details and insight that were really, I think, added so much to the making of the film.
But this film is very much in your style in that, it's not a biopic. It is, you've got something else in mind. Maybe you can explain that.
Yeah, I think for me it was, an interesting challenge of how do you tell her story. It's such a long, big amount of her life, and how do you distill it down to her experience to fit in a film, and really just to give the impression of what it was like for her, and find creative ways to jump in time and show her evolve from 14 to her late 20s and into adulthood. And I really wanted to capture the time around Graceland, so my idea was that it's her entering Graceland and leaving Graceland, and that was the part of time I was going to focus on. But of course I had to give some idea of her backstory of how she met him and ended up there, and really wanted it to be relatable, because that's what I felt about the book, that even though it's so unusual, the setting, she goes through things that so many universal things that all women go through with your first kiss, or being new at school, and having a baby and becoming a mother, and this idea that when he goes off on the tour bus, that she's supposed to stay at home with the baby while the guys go off and work and have fun. And so just trying to always connect it to the human side of her story, and kind of the highs and lows of their relationship in a hopefully truthful way.
And this is very much Priscilla going into Elvis's world, and I think you do that in the movie by, she's always entering a room and Elvis is already in it. It's almost like you get that impression of her, she's always having to step into his world.
Yeah, definitely, that she was really this experience of being in Elvis's world, and it so formed her early years of growing up in his world. And I really wanted to show the contrast of when he's there, it's full of noise and people and excitement and energy, and then when he's not there, just the quietness of her alone. And she talks a lot about in the book of kind of she got there and then he goes off to do a movie and she's expected to stay at home, and I was like, what are you doing all that time? You're not allowed to have friends. I thought I was, imagine she was told she can't bring friends to Graceland, so she has to be there alone. And I think it was, I know she was friendly with some of the women that worked there, but I think it seemed like it was, an isolating experience.
Yes, for sure. Do you think that audiences will see Elvis in a way, I don't think he's ever really been portrayed brilliantly by Jacob, actually, but you see the guy behind the scenes, you don't see the star.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting, her memoir, because it really shows the human, private side of Elvis and his vulnerability and you understand where his frustrations came from as an artist, and I thought it was so interesting to see that side and what it was like for her. And so I really tried to show through her point of view, always go back to her point of view of what her experience was like. And I really didn't want to vilify him. I wanted him to be human with flaws, and seeing it from her way and have another understanding. I wanted to really show her point of view of what her experience was like with him in private. So it's not him as a performer, it's it's how she saw him in their private life and his vulnerabilities as an artist.
You've got an arc where, of course, Kaylee, again, fantastic performance, starts off as 14 years old and ending sometime later. I mean, how did you make sure that, because she really looks like a teenager at the start of this movie?
Yeah, it was really important to me to have the same actress play her throughout her life, and she goes from 14 to like 29 and really goes from a little girl to a adult woman and a mother. And so I was so impressed with how Kaylee was able to keep track of that, because we were shooting out of order, and how she really made that transition, I think, is really striking to see.
And, you know, I always love the fact that, you know, with your movies, I see colour, I see feminine colours, you know, and with this there's makeup, there's nails, there's a soft furnishings. You know, how much did this colour palette add to the film? How important was it?
Yeah, it was really important for me to build the world, and it felt like it's this vibrant 60s Memphis Graceland world with shag carpet and tons of drapery. And luckily there's a lot of documentation and photos, so many photos of them, and home movies, and just the colors that people wore then were so different. So to really be in that palette, and it was fun to go into that world, and I hope the audience is transformed to, you know, for a moment to be in her world.
Absolutely, but also 50s, the 1950s as a teenager as well. I got that.
Oh, great. Yeah, it was, I really wanted to show the transition of her from the late 50s into the 60s, and her transformation when she, from kind of drab Germany in the winter to vibrant Graceland. It was almost like, you know, coming to Oz when she first comes, and for the colors to be brighter, and it was just a new chapter of her life, and discovering a new style and expression.